people analysis. And how does that make you feel? That's our typical conception of what a psychologist does. They'll ask questions, they'll make you talk about yourself, and then they'll sit back and reply with even more questions. Indeed, deeply understanding people's histories, experiences, and emotions will certainly let you analyze and read them. Suppose you ask someone about their parents, their upbringing, their past relationships, and how happy they are with their job. You interview them for 2 hours and ask probing questions ranging from interview to interrogation style. Armed with just a little bit of insight in psychology, you can now make a pretty reasonable hypothesis as to how they handle issues or how their worldview might be slanted to a certain view. In other words, it can get you to the goal of reading people. But none of this really gets us to our goal of analyzing and understanding people in a flash, from first glance, or purely from observation. Not to say that this is a goal that is truly achievable, but when we talk about analyzing people, we want to do it quickly for a variety of reasons. We want to understand them before they open their mouths. We want to be able to see their motivations. We want to be able to protect ourselves. We want to be able to connect and communicate better. We want to be more emotionally intelligent. We want to categorize people so we can treat them more appropriately. We want to know how to appeal to them, romantically or not. We want to be able to tell if they're lying or what their true emotions are, despite their words to the contrary. Everyone might have their own reason for wanting to analyze people at the speed of light. Yet, one of the bigger benefits is that through knowing what to look for in others, we can actually better understand ourselves. Lacking an understanding of yourself means that you won't know why you're behaving in certain ways. You may not understand how or why you got to where you currently are. More importantly, you won't be able to decipher your own needs and wants in situations. You're more or less winging it on a daily basis if you don't apply some of these same principles to yourself. Take a simple day-to-day activity of exercise to illustrate the importance of having greater self-awareness. If a man knows that he is more of an introvert, he may opt to take hikes on trails or utilize headphones at the gym to keep to himself. He'll spend a lot of time avoiding people, and he's well aware of that. He'll use his exercise sessions as an opportunity to recharge from the outside world and gather himself. If he was an extrovert, he might rather take a cycling class or work out with a few friends at the local park. He would seek to add a social element to most of his daily activities because that's what makes him feel good and energized. Both versions of this man know what he prefers as a result of understanding their own personalities. Thus, he places himself in situations he knows are best for him. Otherwise, he might engage in self-sabotage on a daily basis. Had the introvert not known what pushed him over the edge, he could have had an anxiety attack when walking into high-energy aerobics class. Or, had the extrovert embarked on a 5-hour solo hiking excursion to the woods, he could have been bored out of his mind. Knowing yourself and possessing self-awareness allows you to make more mindful decisions that are right for you. The more that you're well acquainted with yourself, the more you'll also see that your identity and purpose are wholly within your control. If that's a side benefit to understanding how to analyze people better, it's a pretty powerful one. It was the inimitable Albert Einstein that once said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions." Just like the pithy example with the man and his choice of exercise, we can understand the parameters that we are working in and that other people are also working in, including but not limited to values, perspectives, self-identity, and overall personality. Everything else can flow more smoothly. Analyzing people is certainly a skill that has wide applicability, but it's not necessarily from asking probing questions like a psychologist or observing people's body language and cues like an FBI interrogator, even though we will go into depth about those kind of methods later on. There are multiple angles that contribute to a holistic view of a person, and it's only through taking them all together that we can be accurate. For this reason, it's helpful to start from the beginning in terms of how people thought about identity and personality. It will give you a general overview of how to think about people's behaviors and the motivations behind them. For instance, when you seek to read and analyze someone, should you be looking at their inherent temperament or rather to their environment? Are they learned or innately part of one's destiny? Are we slaves to our genetics and destined to be like our parents? Can we find an answer to what has been an ongoing debate and the subject of study by psychologists, scientists, and philosophers for decades? We'll get there. A brief history of analyzing. To understand how we arrived at the modern take on personality and identity that can inform our analyzing, it's helpful to start from a historical perspective. It comes as no surprise that one of the earliest theories stems from philosophers in the ancient Greek era. The Greeks first theorized that one could classify types of personalities and temperaments through humors. This was called humorism. It was Hippocrates, 460 to 370 BC, considered one of the founding fathers of Western medicine, who first developed and defined humorism as a medical theory. He believed that a person's mood and emotions came from an excess of 4 specific bodily fluids: yellow bile, black bile, blood, and phlegm. Thus, in varying amounts, these represented a person's personality traits and general temperaments. As a follow-up, in Galen's 129 to circa 200 AD dissertation De Temperamentis, he studied and developed the typology of these temperaments. He was determined to find the physiological reasons behind people's behaviors. Derived from the 4 elements of air, earth, wind, and fire, Galen classified these behaviors as being either hot or cold and dry or wet components. A balance between the qualities was also something that could be possible, and what Galen worked to prove as being the ideal personality. Galen theorized that an ideal personality comprised a complementary balance of hot or cold and dry or wet. However, eventually realizing that such balance was unlikely to characterize most people in society, he eventually codified 4 primary temperaments: choleric, melancholic, sanguine, and phlegmatic. These were respectively named after the bodily humors that Hippocrates noted. When humors would excessively produce, this would create an imbalance in impaired qualities. Yellow bile, choleric temperament. This person is characterized as being confident, ambitious, overbearing, and passionate. This strong-willed personality tends to be more extroverted than introverted. Black bile, melancholic temperament. Melancholics tend to be reserved and thoughtful. They can be moody and expect a high level of perfectionism. They also value alone time and are mindful of making decisions. Blood, sanguine temperament. No social event can be without the social butterflies. Sanguine temperaments are people-oriented and are deemed to be the happy-go-lucky types, but they can also be a bit frazzled and disorganized. Phlegm, phlegmatic temperament. Loyalty and consistency are the best terms to describe phlegmatic types. They are quiet and stable, which are what other people appreciate to keep their relationships more balanced. They can also be seen as submissive due to their overly trustworthy behaviors. Many people will identify with some, if not all, of these humors. There may be particular days or situations that cause people to portray one or more of these temperaments at any given time, but generally speaking, one type of humor will be more dominant over the others on a consistent basis. Overall, humorism greatly centers around the individual possessing unique compositions, like a standard recipe with deviations here and there to add some personality and flavor. However, humorism never explained the reasons behind an individual's personality. Different humors must have aggregated in different amounts in people, but what caused it? Was it just a birthright or curse? Still, it works similarly to how we are trying to learn to do so with this book. With humorism, you would observe someone and then categorize their composition of humors. Similarly, we're trying to glean information about people through observations and then make conclusions about their character, tendencies, and traits. Humors may not be so helpful in the modern age, but the theory demonstrates a long interest in understanding self-identity and analyzing other people. This has been Think Like a Psychologist: How to Analyze Emotions, Read Body Language and Behavior, Understand Motivations, and Decipher Intentions. Written by Patrick King, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2019 by Patrick King. Production copyright by Patrick King.